Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Erin Rochon, founder and CEO of Rochon and Associates Inc., a boutique bookkeeping firm specializing in medical, dental, and legal. Welcome to the show, Erin. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. Doing quite well. We're getting a little bit colder weather here up in Toronto area. So definitely, missing the summer weather, the summer heat, but coming into some busy seasons, wrapping up the year. So for a lot of practices, they're, coming into their year end. So doing a lot of things there and just definitely keeping very busy with practice.
Fantastic. Are you finding some time for yourself?
Trying to. We actually just did a quick little vacation out to Halifax on the weekend. Took the kids out there for the first time, so that was quite exciting. It was pretty exhausting. 3 days of like literally road tripping, but it was a lot of fun. Lots of nice sights to see. So, yeah,
absolutely. And so, how did you get? Did you drive? So you drove over, yeah?
We actually flew over. So and then basically toured the island for 3 days.
Okay, fantastic. Because I was just like, if you did decide to drive it, like how far would that be, or how long would that take?
I want to say it's about a 15-hour drive. So, yeah, the kids wouldn't have done that. Yeah, no. Hour and 45-minute flight or a 15-hour drive. We'll do the flights.
Absolutely. I see. Again, like I think I probably sound like a broken record, but I'm still getting used to like time zones and distances in the US and Canada, because like 15 hours, like 15-hour drive, like you're probably in Asia, like you've left Europe.
Yes.
Like it's mad.
Yeah. Well, the funny part that we always say here in Ontario is like literally is like it will take you 15 hours just to get out of Ontario. Like Ontario is so huge, so to get from one end to the other, it's insane, right? So yeah, it's the land mass is quite a bit different over here. Yeah.
Fantastic. So before we jump into kind of your business and the world of bookkeeping, I'd love to take it back a little bit and sort of talk more about you and your background. So, where did it all start? Or where did it all start? No, tell me about your background.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, prior to starting the business, basically, I was in college and got my first job actually working in a dental practice. My now ex-sister-in-law was a hygienist in the practice, and they needed a receptionist, and I needed a job. So I kind of got in there. And then things just sort of took off from there. So I started in as just sort of a reception role, helping out, and then quickly sort of transposed into more of a management role within the practices that I worked in. So I did that and worked in like as an office manager, kind of managing the practice, managing the staff, doing all the front desk stuff, and then as well doing all the bookkeeping. So that's kind of where all that sort of rolled in. And I did that for about 8 years and then sort of launched the business after that.
Fantastic. So you've kind of done, you did a bit of everything in those 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, everything from, managing all the staff, managing the office, being the liaison between like the staff and the dentists, sort of trying to take a lot of the load off the dentist's practice so that they could focus on the treatments and the treatment planning and the client care. And then just running the overall practice, making sure that things were going through, making sure that the sundries were, best pricing and trying to get, vendor accounts versus just randomly ordering from the call center, right? Which means you always get better pricing that way. Things like that, what to order in bulk, what not to order in bulk, things that, just all made sense to the practice to make sure that everything was going well. So tons of experience as far as all that was concerned.
Fantastic. And what did you most enjoy about that time in dental practices?
Most I enjoyed. I mean, I've always been that person who is like so focused on the efficiencies and like making sure that everybody's being as productive as they can and doing the roles that they should be. So, why is the dentist calling the vendors? Why is the dentist making the orders, right? Like, why can't that just be passed off to either a clerical or the office manager, that kind of thing? The dentist should be focusing on the treatment plans, should be focusing on providing the treatment, follow-up care for clients. Same thing with the hygienist and the assistants, right? Like there's so many other things that they should be doing than clerical work. So just sort of trying to make sure that everybody was being the most productive and efficient within the practice and streamlining a lot of the processes, which was, such a major flaw in all the practices that I went into. The processes were just absolutely absent. Nobody knew where they were going, what they were doing, what they were in charge of, how to do it. If we had to bring in a temp, it was like, they had no idea where anything was or what our process was, right? So it was just trying to streamline a lot of things so that turnover was so much easier, right?
Fantastic. And so processes, that is something that pops up quite a lot. Like you say, like it's not unique to practices. Like a lot of them don't really have anything nailed down. You know, most of it's in their head, or it's in one person's head, and they assume that the rest of the practice know what's going on.
Yeah.
So did you get quite involved in creating processes for these practices? And yeah.
Absolutely. I got very involved from everything from, you know, the front desk opening procedures for the operatories. You know, how does the dentist like things set up? Because obviously every dentist is a little bit different. They want different things on their trays. They want different things on their trays depending on the procedure that's happening, all of that kind of thing. So I worked together with the assistants and with the hygienists and just made sure that we had those processes down. Again, for efficiencies, and a lot of the time it was, you know, there's a lot of sick days, unfortunately, in the dental industry. So, you know, when the hygienist called in sick and I had to bring in a temp, it was quick and easy. I'd call them, I'd say, here, I'm going to email you the process. They'd have a heads up to say, okay, this is great. I know how the dentist likes this. I know how he operates, you know, all that kind of stuff, when to call him in for my recall exam, how soon before, like all that stuff, right? So we had that in. So when they stepped into the office, it was just smooth. It was like they'd worked there forever, right? So the patients felt comfortable. The dentist was good. Nobody's stress levels were hugely exaggerated because they had this new person coming in and going, oh my goodness, how's the day going to run? So we did that, and it was very, very successful as far as just making sure everybody transitioned really well whenever there was a change.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. I think we could probably, should probably hook you up with a colleague of mine, Glenda Acevedo. She does systems and she does them for dental practice, and there's like a clear like day and night between like a practice that has systems and processes versus one that doesn't. So and you can also tell like how kind of enthusiastic you get about it as well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. Like I said, my whole focus is always about productivity. Right? Productivity, efficiency, and just making sure everybody's stress levels are like even keel. We've got enough stress in our lives. We don't need all these additional things when we go into work, right? So if we can keep everybody's stress levels down and keep them happy, that's a main goal. So
yeah, perfect. That's awesome. So obviously you did that for 8 years. So you worked as, you know, all the different roles in a dental practice. After 8 years, you decided to start your own business.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, for me, it was sick of the commute. So again, we talk about, you know, sizes of
how long was your commute?
So my commute was anywhere from about an hour and a half to 2.5 hours each day, each way, depending on like traffic and weather, right? Winter, there was days where I was on the road for 4 hours just trying to get into work, right? If we had snowstorms, and as the office manager, I had to go in. It didn't matter, right? I was always in the office. So
why?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. So I just got sick of that. And then as well, it was, you know, the amount of stuff that was on my plate with, you know, making sure that, you know, I was always checking voicemails and I was always on. And that just got a bit old. Once I became a mom, I was like, no, you know what? I want to be able to focus on my family when I'm not at work. So I made that decision to sort of go and say, you know what, I'm going to make a transition. What am I going to do? At first, you know, I debated on doing like dental consulting because of all the experience, but then at that time, and even still to a certain degree now, like dental consultants have such a faux pas behind them. Like they're pretty negatively looked upon, especially in our industry out here in Ontario. Because there was like, everybody was calling themselves a dental consultant, charging, you know, thousands of dollars and really getting nothing accomplished. So they kind of had a sour taste in their mouth. So I was like, I don't really know if I want to go that route. So I was like, well, you know what? I've been doing the bookkeeping. So like, let's see where that goes. And then it just took off from there. And that kind of brings us to where we are now. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was either dental consultant, be hated as a dental consultant, or be loved as a bookkeeper, yeah?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
No, fantastic. And so I know this is probably going to sound quite basic, and obviously it's for you, it's very basic, but I would just like to kind of explain what bookkeeping is. I keep saying it's such a mouthful.
It can
bookkeeping.
Be. Yes.
Just very basically, just, you know, the fundamentals, just so everyone's on the same page before we sort of move on.
Yeah, absolutely. So bookkeeping, we kind of like to look at it as your day-to-day transactions, right? So we are helping to transact and make sure that all of your ins and outs from your practice are properly classified. Making sure that they're transacted properly, making sure that they're categorized properly, and making sure that they're accurate to what's actually happening in your bank and credit cards as well. So we're looking at that whole picture scope of all the ins and outs on the day-to-day basis of your practice.
Fantastic. That's a great explanation. And so why, especially for dentists and dental practices, why is it so important that they do take bookkeeping seriously?
So one of the biggest things that we bring sort of into that table is, a lot of dentists and stuff, obviously with their sundries and their purchases and things like that, a lot of the times there's different categories that are kind of happening. So when the dentist is looking at their overall sort of profit margins and what's going on in their practice, they want to be able to see, okay, how much did I spend on equipment? How much did I spend on disposables? How much did I spend on, small equipment and things like that? Repairs to the machines, like the equipment that's going on, major purchases versus, smaller purchases for any equipment, upkeep of the office. And then we also look at things like staffing, how much is my assistants costing? How much are my hygienists costing? How much are my associates costing versus how much are they bringing in, right? So we're really looking at those specifics. And it really helps the dentist to sort of be able to review and know what's actually happening in their practice. And then the other thing that we're also looking at is ensuring that if, you're saying that you had a production number of X for this month, did you actually receive the payments for that as well? Or was there some, major discrepancies, which helps to kind of track and prevent any fraud, which is actually pretty high in dental offices. With, receptionists and things like that, doing some shady things, which, is quite easy when they've got access to the finances and insurance claims and all that kind of stuff. So there's been quite a few reports of fraud in Ontario in the dentistry industry.
Wow.
So it helps by having somebody who's an outside person versus, your inside person doing all of it. It helps to keep an eye and cross those T's and dot those I's there.
Oh wow! So just I hadn't even thought about fraud or heard of like that. So so is it someone inside the practice is putting like a fraudulent insurance claim in?
That's exactly it. So there's fraudulent insurance claims that kind of get put in. And then there's also been just check writing, right? So, writing a check out to as if it's a patient refund or a vendor. And a lot of the times the dentists aren't even necessarily aware. A lot of dentists have signing authority for somebody within the office so that somebody else in the office is writing those checks. So it's sort of, it can happen to anybody, which is quite unfortunate. And like I said, there's been a lot of reports of it. There was actually one lady a number of years ago, who was caught multiple times. It's a little bit harder now because you can't just endorse checks anymore. Where before you used to, take a check, just endorse it and cash it into any check, any account, right? But it still is pretty prevalent and pretty easy to do in a dental practice.
So I know it's not quite your specialty, but like, is there anything that a dentist can do to like protect themselves from that kind of thing?
Biggest thing again is just being aware, right? So like I said, by having a third party person who's doing that, but weekly, biweekly, monthly bookkeeping, it's something that we're watching for. We're watching those numbers. We're making sure that, if there is a $10,000 check that got written, does it align to a payable? Does it align to where it should be going? Or does it look a little bit suspicious? And bringing that to the attention of the dentist to make sure that they're aware, especially for the bigger practices, like I said, that would have signing authority provided to an office manager or to a clerical staff, where they're not, they're not the ones that actually physically signing the checks, or, staff that also have access to the banking information and online banking accounts, right? So,
yeah. Fantastic. That's awesome. And so when should a dentist consider taking on a bookkeeper?
We say basically from the most part is right from the beginning. So one of the biggest things that we do as a bookkeeping firm is we also do training and consulting. So for those practices who are literally like just starting out, obviously, the chair's not full, the income's not coming in, they've got other staff that they need to pay in order to maintain. So, that putting that output of that expense isn't always necessarily something that they're able to do. So we recommend at the very least getting yourself connected with a good bookkeeper who can set up your systems for you, train either yourself or your office manager or senior admin on how to do some of these entries, so that you're getting set off on the right foot right from the beginning, right? Because the last thing we want is, a practice coming to us a year or two in who hasn't filed anything, who hasn't done any bookkeeping, and basically just has boxes of paperwork that they need reconciled, right?
Oh, no.
And I mean, that goes for all industries, but it's hard, especially as a starting out practice. It's super important to know what your numbers are. So, having somebody who's experienced and trained to be able to provide those numbers for you, or to at least be looking at the entries that are being done by yourself and your staff to make sure that they make sense, is such a key thing for growing practice, to be able to evaluate where you're going and make those key decisions while you're opening, while you're processing, while you're adding to your practice.
Awesome, that's fantastic. And so do you still get clients coming to you with like bags of receipts, or have you kind of taught them all to be digital?
Yeah, so we do still have some. I mean, it is most practices, and especially after, the COVID pandemic, have become a little bit more savvy, and have become a little bit more aware of, what can we do to keep things electronically versus paper, just to make things a little bit easier. But we definitely do have a lot of very paper heavy dental offices still. And a part of it really is, I mean, it's easier when you're getting those invoices and those packing slips with your orders. It's obviously easiest to verify them when it's in paper. So there's definitely reasons for it, and we understand it. But we definitely, the clients that we work with, we generally are looking at trying to keep them on a schedule and a routine of, getting their paperwork from them every week or two, or every month at the latest, so that, we're keeping track of it. Like I said, we're keeping on top of the numbers as well.
Yeah, perfect. So does it give you shivers when you hear like a ruffling bag of papers coming through the door?
I mean, it does. It's kind of like, oh gosh, here we go, right? What are we gonna find in here?
Yeah.
We always say to patients or to clients as well with it is, it's more costly for us to be trying to sort through a bag of receipts, right? So, you can put your money there if you want, but ideally giving it to us a little bit more organized and in the way that we sort of recommend will be a lot less costly to you. Having your administrator, sorting through some of these receipts at their hourly rate versus our hourly rate is a lot more effective, right?
Yeah.
So we consult with them, we give them direction, we explain to them how the best way to sort things are and prepare things and everything for when they hand it over to us. That's going to be the most efficient.
Fantastic. That is awesome. And so obviously it makes sense. Obviously it's obvious why you should have a bookkeeper as a practice owner or someone working in the practice. Why does it make sense to have one that has a specialism in dental over just a general bookkeeper?
So the biggest thing that we sort of are able to offer to our clients is having that knowledge of, what is required in an operatory, what is, a disposable sundry versus a retainable sundry, what are the prophy cups? Like, what does that mean? What does, what's the high speed? Like, is that equipment? Is it not equipment? What does it look like? How does it operate? What's the lifespan of it? Things like that. Also the importance of tracking the income based on, associate and based on provider, and then having your expenses docketed out as the providers, right? So you can truly look at, as I said at the beginning, would be, my associate's bringing in this much. How much am I paying my associate? Does it make sense? How much is my hygiene bringing in? How much am I paying my hygiene? Associates are a little bit different, obviously, because they're usually based on a percentage of their revenues. But even still, it's nice to sort of look at, okay, what are they bringing in on a year over year, right? One of the things that we always say to dentists and to any business owner is at the end of the year, you want to review your numbers, right? Where's my revenues coming from? Where's my expenses going out? And does it make sense to continue on the same path that we're continuing on? So one of the things that often happens is we think we're providing this amazing service and we're making all this money, but this service is costing us so much headache. And the reality is it's making us no money. right? So, or there's an associate within the practice that like they're constantly just causing struggles and they're constantly causing things. And when you don't know your numbers, you don't know how much revenue they're actually bringing in. When you look at those numbers at the end of the year, it's like, oh, well, they're only producing X. Why are we keeping them, right? Like, why are we dealing with all of these struggles and all of these issues when they're really not a high producer within the practice? So being able to evaluate that stuff from a high level versus having to dig in deep on your reports, it makes such a huge difference, right? So that's the biggest difference on knowing that. And then we also just have the knowledge of why practices do what they do a lot of the time, right? Why do they run it this way? Why does the associate get paid out this way? You know, if it's a new practice, why is an associate, you know, guaranteed a daily production number regardless of bookings, like for a certain number of months, like things like that, right? We understand the workings of that practice and why it's working that way. And we don't have to ask all these extra questions that takes valuable time out of the practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, like, I guess from their perspective, like, you're not going to bombard them with loads of questions.
Yes.
And obviously, you know, from day one, there's a good chance that everything will be classified correctly and not have mistakes. So I guess there's
that's exactly it. That's exactly it, right? So we know, you know, when we're looking at their vendor bills, like, okay, we can check and we can see, okay, well, yeah, this was equipment repair, this was a sundry, this was a disposable, whatever. This was, you know, equipment or whatever. So we're able to sort of classify those a lot easier versus what we've seen from practices that we've taken over. Sort of everything just gets put under supplies and materials, regardless of what it was, right? Because most general accountants and general bookkeepers don't know what they're looking for and what they're looking at when it comes to those invoices. So unless if the dentist or the office manager is taking the time to go, you know, A, B, C and marking up every single invoice to say, okay, well, this was equipment, this was disposable, this is whatever. Everything just goes under one category, which makes it difficult to view and really truly understand what's going on in your practice.
Yeah, and yeah, the clinicians are already sort of, you know, super time busy, and you know, for them to have to spend or put the time aside to like, it's almost like partly categorize it for you. Like it's almost like they might as well just do it themselves.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Excellent, that's fantastic. And what else can you help dental practices with? So not just obviously the bookkeeper side, you've obviously got, you know, a slightly broader skill set. What else can you help them with?
So some of the things that usually come to us is, you know, we do get questions on staffing, and, you know, how do we, you know, overall, I guess, just morale and stuff in the business. So we've done a little bit of consulting on that. We've done some consulting on just, you know, associate splits, especially for newer dentists. Like, what should the associate be that split? Should we be giving, you know, a guaranteed amount for production hours, that kind of thing? And just overall practice sort of management, right? So if they are bringing in a new office manager or they're growing and they're like, okay, we're going to put somebody in that management position, you know, we have the ability to sort of consult with them to say, okay, here's some things that, you know, you should be taking over, or you should be watching for, or you should be looking for. These are some things that the dentist shouldn't be working on, right? Like, take some of these things off the dentist's plate, take some of these things off the hygienist's plate. Or the associate's plate and things like that, right? So we're just able to sort of, like I said, it's more just the knowledge of how a dental practice runs and operates from an overall viewpoint, that we're able to sort of give a little bit of extra feedback and stuff outside of just the financials.
Brilliant. And obviously you wouldn't be able to get that from just a general bookkeeper.
Exactly. Typically not, right? Typically they don't, like, general bookkeepers have kind of been doing bookkeeping their whole life and don't really know a lot of the other stuff. So it gives us that little, you know, step above.
Yeah, love that. That's fantastic. So based on your experience, obviously this is going to be a great one. So you've obviously got experience of working in a practice.
Yes.
You've got experience of running your own business,
yes.
And you've got obviously experience of working with dentists and dental practices on a B2B basis.
Yes.
So what would be your number one piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting a dental practice?
So one of the biggest things, I mean, that we've sort of seen is, I mean, people make the difference in any practice, right? Your people are your key players. Your people are the people who are there building your practice with you. So, making sure you've got the right people in place from, front desk all the way back to back office, right? And consult with those professionals. A lot of people, as I said earlier, it's a financial thing. They're like, okay, we get it. You're pinching pennies, especially when you're first buying a practice, when you're first starting a practice, building out an office. It's expensive, the clinical chairs are not cheap. The lights are not cheap. Like, there is nothing from a startup perspective that is cheap. But going too cheap is going to cost you in the long run. So, getting those professional consultants in place right from the beginning. We don't need to be doing everything, but, let us get you set up with the right processes, get the right accountant working with you from a taxation perspective. How do they want things classified from, those initial startup phases? What are we amortizing? What are we not? That kind of thing. So there's a lot of just things with that. But yeah, when you're starting up that practice, people, those are the keys. And a lot of people just don't realize it, right? And the biggest thing that we always say, and I say this with all of our clients, dentists or not, is you're good at being a dentist. You're good at doing your trade. So why are you trying to do everything else? You're not going to be great at it. It's going to add you stress. A lot of people just head in the sand and don't even think about it. And they're like, we'll figure it out one day, which is such a bad business practice. And it usually comes to bite you in the ass at the end. And it's not something that you want to do. Right. So yeah, just get everything aligned right from the beginning, and don't cheap out, right? Pay that little bit of extra to get the right person in play. Otherwise, in the end, it costs you a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally can relate to the sand thing. If you ask Sheila, I'm kind of guilty of doing an ostrich or two sometimes.
Yes, we all are. The things we don't want to deal with, absolutely. We're like, no, not dealing with it.
No, not today. Maybe not ever. Maybe not ever. And then it pops up in a conversation, and Sheila's like, I can see the look on her face. And I'm like, where do I go? Like, where do I hide?
Exactly. I think I hear my phone ringing.
yeah. Or my bad internet connection. Like,
exactly.
Excellent. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But no, Erin, this has been fantastic. And if people listening, are interested in learning more about you and how you can help them in their dental practice, how can they reach out?
So, I mean, we're pretty easy to reach. Phone call. You can reach us at 289-675-1720. Email is my first name, Erin, at erinrochon.ca. You can check out our website, erinrochon.ca. Any of those kind of work. We respond to text, phone call, email. So whatever works best for you, that's the easiest way to get a hold of us, basically.
Brilliant. Well, if you do need a bookkeeper or your bookkeeper isn't quite pulling their weight, then please get in touch with Erin. I will include all those details in the show notes. But finally, Erin, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate your time. You are very knowledgeable, and I think any dental practice would be lucky to have you as their bookkeeper. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Brilliant. Right, Erin, I will talk to you very soon.
Thank you.